Thanks everyone for stopping by for this CBI webinar and a sponsored one. And give you a little background, if you were following our listserv from a few weeks ago, there were questions about TuneIn and what some of their new approach is, TuneIn OnAir. And the discussion that we read about was commercial radio. So Andrew and I got together and asked some questions and thought that a webinar, which Andrew, just so you know, as this is being recorded, we'll get other people watching that recording. You know, there's conflicts of schedules and stuff. But what this means for us as far as non-commercial educational stations and some of the cool opportunities. And I'll tell you, I'm pretty excited about what's out there. And so with that, Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the intro. Nice to see everyone on here live, and for those joining us in the pre-recorded session, hope you enjoy. And obviously, if you do watch this in a pre-recorded session and don't get a chance to participate in some of the questions or more in-depth information we review, always feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact information, as well as Rob's and Jamie's, will be in the deck. And so you'll be able to work with any of us on getting answers that you might need here. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. Great. So here's our agenda for today. We're trying to keep it fairly high level in terms of what topics we're reviewing, and leave as much time as we can to answer any questions that you may have once we get through everything here. So first, we're going to start with just an overview for those of you who are not as familiar with TuneIn. We thought it might be helpful to start there and just give you guys a little bit of a history here and share some details around TuneIn and update you guys on what we have been working on over the last several years and where we're moving. So I want to start with a couple of quizzes. We're actually going to start with one quiz at the start of each one of these sections, just to test people and see what they're how much they are aware of how much the landscape has changed recently. And so this first one here is the question around streaming now accounting for what percentage of overall station's audience. If anyone has a guess, feel free to throw it into chat or unmute yourself, but here are your options.
I'll go ahead and throw one out. 26%. I see this was May of 2021. So yep. Obviously COVID having a little impact on that as well.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay, cool. So, and I do see some of the other answers in chat, super helpful. And so the answer is 10%, which I know some were thinking it may be a little bit higher than that, but I think some important context here is that prior to the pandemic, just 2019, that number was at 5%. So when you talk about the amount of compounding that we've seen in a short period of time, much of which is being driven by the changes in user behaviors and habits that people are making as it relates to audio, seeing a number double that quickly is saying a lot. And you can see here, it jumped up to 8% during the shelter at home months of April and May. And so now coming into that a year after that first study, rounding out at a clean 10%. So obviously, TuneIn has been around, and some of you guys may have worked with us in some capacity over your times at these stations. And you know, we are heavily focused on this mission and this mission solely, which is reinventing radio for a connected world and trying to build the bridges and the programs that will help stations such as yourself, most efficiently navigate these waters. I'm going to start with a little bit of a background, so I'll let Rob start, just so you guys understand our history.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. So one other key point, this is our 20th year of existence as TuneIn. So we've been around for a long time. I was one of the people that came in when the company was kind of purchased back at the end of 2021. But my background is basically I've been in first strategy consulting, and then digital advertising, performance-based marketing for it's like 20 plus years now. So I feel like I'm getting up there. But I've worked in every part of the Lumascape. If you're familiar with the Lumascapes that Terry Kawaja puts out around digital advertising, whether it's an audio, video, whatever, it's kind of a very nice graphical piece. But these are complex ecosystems, and there are different groups of things in there. So think of like AdsWiz, as an ad server exchange, or how does iHeart fit in there, and that sort of thing. So I'm excited to be here, and I've been getting up to speed on broadcast and the nuances of broadcast. Andrew?
Sorry about that. I'm Andrew Bach. I've been with the company now just about 9 years, going to be coming up on 9 years. I'm a broadcast radio vet. I started my career 22 years ago at KROC WXRK in New York. I was a Howard Stern intern that much like I actually went and watched the How to Get Your First Job in Radio, John, session that John Shambi participated in. And there were a lot of parallels in their stories in terms of getting the opportunity for a 3-month internship, which I was then able to build into a more full-time gig there, which has translated into my full career here in audio. After leaving the Stern Show in 2000, I spent a good portion of my career with Westwood One in a multitude of roles there: marketing, programming, talent, and sales. And so I feel like I got a really good education on all things audio, from the best radio show and the most successful radio show in the history of our medium, up to and including today, which is now this fun transition that we're experiencing on the digital side. I came to TuneIn specifically to help work with stations and make them understand this transition, the importance of it, and the ways that new consumers and audiences were finding their content and engaging with it. It has been, there's been a lot of advancement recently, but this has been a long game that we've been playing along with you guys for a while. Jamie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. When Andrew mentioned we'd have the opportunity to speak with you all, everyone on the team was really excited. So this is a great day for us. I joined TuneIn about 2 years ago. I am a committed media junkie and worked for about 4 years at Vox Media. The company was starting to spin up some really exciting audio streams of business, including Vox Media podcast networks. And that's around the time I wanted to fully devote myself to audio. And I saw TuneIn as a great opportunity to do that because of the ways it was bringing radio into the 21st century. And so at TuneIn, my role is twofold. I work on strategy and operations, and most recently have been really focused on building out our newest revenue stream. It's our third to complement our subscription and advertising businesses. We call it TuneIn OnAir, and its whole focus and goal is to support broadcasters like yourselves. So we'll be talking about that more today. And thanks again for having us.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Couple of stats, just so you guys have a quick snapshot of where TuneIn sits today. 630 million total listening hours per month streaming through the platform. We're at about 75 million global monthly active listeners, 30 million of which are here in the United States, and are where we are focused where the on-air program is focused most today. 100,000 plus radio stations across genres from all over the world, 200 different countries and territories. And so when you look at sort of the breadth of the content overview and what we offer to a user and the one-stop shopping opportunity that a user has to be able to move seamlessly between this wide variety of content. You can understand why, as we've really solidified partnerships, built up first-in-class music stations ourselves, extended relationships with leagues such as the NFL and the NHL, sports rights with ESPN Radio and TalkSport, et cetera. It's really good time for us to try and take a lot of the practices that we've found to be very successful within these disciplines and try and turn that attention towards the national and local radio side of the business, and specifically your stations. Rob, I don't know if you have anything else to add on this.
Yeah, and I think one other thing, and we have some fun quizzes later around this topic, but our general belief is that we want to be the biggest open platform for terrestrial audio and spoken word content, because the reality is friction for a consumer is never a good thing, right? So if you need to go to 7 different apps in a day to try to listen to 7 different stations, there is a high probability that at some point someone will get fatigued, forget, or whatever. So our general feeling is as we add, everyone benefits as we add more stations and more content on the platform, because it allows people to seamlessly go from one thing to another. So I don't know what everybody else's routines are like, but for myself, I have an Echo in my bathroom. In the morning when I take a shower, I turn on CNBC that we have simulcast, because I don't necessarily need to watch it. So I listen to that to find out what's going on in the markets. Then I'll switch to some classic rock, once that's done. And then in the afternoon, I might listen to a podcast. So people have routines, and the reality is we want to make sure that we can people can satisfy all of their kind of audio needs in one-stop shop, which then benefits all those people that are within that ecosystem. Thanks, Andrew.
Yep. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to really dive in on our perception of where we see college challenges, and then hear from you guys as well on either confirming a lot of this, or informing us of some other ones that we may have missed. But let's start with a second quiz. So what percentage of millennials do you think own an AM/FM radio? Here are your choices. We've got a couple of answers, A and B. One C from Greg there. So the answer is C, 68%. So Greg, you got it. And for context, I think it's important to look at this as a comp against our other sort of stated generational cohorts. So if you look at Gen X, 81%, the baby boomers at 90%. So 13 to 24-year-olds. This was, again, from the Edison Research share of ear from last year, 50% less than the average 13-year-old using AM/FM radio. They use their phones 75% more for listening. The swing that we're seeing here from a generational perspective in terms of how they are engaging with their phones and for what purposes. And and I'll get into a couple of other stats on that later in the presentation, but it's really interesting to start to see the numbers bear out in terms of just the material difference and the shift that we're seeing in the ways that people are engaging with and consuming with audio content, especially as we get into the younger and younger cohorts.
And just one quick data point there, and I shared it on the podcast, but I was during the holidays, we were doing some volunteer work at the church, and I was moving stuff around with 2 other college kids, and I said, "Hey, do you listen to your college radio station?" They both go to big schools. I'm pretty sure they all had stations, and they didn't know if the college had a station. And then I said, "Well, hey, by the way, do you guys have an AM/FM radio in your dorm room?" And they were like, no, I don't think so. So that was kind of like the aha moment for me. So my guess is the percentage of ownership is probably driven by automobiles. And then if people aren't really going to have automobiles and just Uber, that's another pressure on that kind of, regular AM FM dial.
Yeah, and even in that session that I mentioned earlier, the one that John Shambi was a part of, about finding your first job in radio, he referenced himself the own research and reports that they had done showing that the vast majority of people that they were talking to, if they were listening to something on their phone already when they got into the car, they just continued with that experience, either through Bluetooth or Apple CarPlay or whatever connection they have in their car. And they never took the time to stop and go turn on sort of the AM FM dial again. So knowing that this is becoming even more and more commonplace for people, it really starts to hammer home and solidify and bolster the numbers that we're seeing in terms of the adoption of this as the preferred method for the younger generations. But obviously seeing these types of headlines, myself, Rob, we've talked about this at length. These are the types of headlines that we hope we don't want to be reading on a monthly basis in 2022 and 2023. Are really focused on working with you guys directly to try to buck this trend as best we can and come up with the right programs that are going to benefit and embolden your stations to be able to continue teaching and educating the next generation of radio broadcast professionals, and keeping this medium that I'm sure all of us care very deeply about moving forward into the next generation. So here's sort of our general view. And Rob, I don't know if you want to touch on some of these in particular, but when we look at this as the sort of 50,000 foot perspective here of
Sure.
the challenges, this is where we were really looking to address the issues.
Yeah, and this was gathered. Andrew spoke with a lot of different broadcasters, so this is kind of an amalgamation of that. But if you kind of put into three buckets, first being distribution, we just went through some statistics how consumer behavior is changing. I even noticed it being at home. I usually would not be at home, but during COVID I was, and all of a sudden I noticed my wife's routines, which was, turn on WFUV on Echo and listen to it all day long, which I had no idea was kind of happening before I was at home all day long. So you have this kind of distribution, and digital is becoming more and more important. Everything's been on demand. And if you think about it, the only kind of medium that hasn't really dramatically changed with the advancement of digital is radio. Video is very, very, very different now, right? We've gone from like 13 stations to, probably 50, if anybody remembers the old cable boxes, to 500, to now it's an infinite dial with these, cableless, head end box missing, like the
OTT services.
virtual, yeah, the OTT services.
Yeah.
And now a lot of people just don't have AM FM radios. Like I was kind of looking around the house the other day and I was like, I don't have an AM FM radio around. So that's problematic. And now everyone's starting to use connected devices. Now, the reality is a lot of these connected devices, while great, are run by very large companies. There can be a lot of cost associated with connecting with them. Some of them are not that reliable, so things break on a regular basis. So that's a problem. And then also auto listening is down because people aren't necessarily driving as much anymore. Like we've kind of broken the idea of everyone goes to the office 5 days a week. And radio was like auto listening was a big driver of radio consumption. And I think Bob Pittman on one of his podcast interviews kind of said, to be a great radio talent, you have to be that person that could sit in the passenger seat while the person's driving and not make them want to like crash the car into an embankment. I'm adding the car crashing part, but it was like, it's that ongoing companion, right? That doesn't annoy you. So I think you've got these kind of challenges around distribution because this stuff all costs money to make sure this stuff is maintained. So that's on the distribution side. On the cost side, obviously, like sometimes schools are closing things down, they're selling them off. There's a lack of funding. Maybe it's just not as exciting anymore for people to be involved. I know it's exciting for everyone here, but is radio considered the same thing that it was back in the day? And then the software, we've heard the software and subscriptions to maintain it, properly maintain and manage the station are also expensive. And then on the content side, there's a lot of great content that's being generated by public radio and college radio. Are those stuck in archives? How do those get surfaced? There might be less money to invest in terms of training people, so they can, if you're staffing the station, like what's the training and continuing education opportunities. And then we all know what's going on with commercial radio. You have a lot of consolidation. You have collapse in terms of like programming. So there's a lot more syndicated programs and off hours when they can't invest in the talent. So you're also seeing the job opportunities in regular radio collapsing as well, based on, people trying to extract cost, and the general, shift of ad dollars to other sources. So those are kind of the big three buckets and some of the themes we heard talking to everybody. I don't know if anybody has any other things you want to add in the chat that you think is a challenge that you're dealing with, or if this was pretty comprehensive.
Or unmute yourself and chime in. That this is, don't feel afraid to do that. And one thing I want to touch on, while anyone is potentially thinking about this, as Rob talked about, sort of the cool factor, what's whether or not it's as engaging or as interesting as it once was. We all, I'm sure, read the passing of Howard Hessman. If you saw most of the trades and the write-ups about him, the focus around his body of work, or the central component of his body of work, was his role on WKRP, a show that I'm sure is very near and dear to many of us here. And there were so many articles that I read that had the same general framing of this, which was back when radio was cool. And they were pointing to him, the character that Howard was playing. And I look at the sort of the frontier that you guys and the landscape that you oversee, and say, this is where we can reinvigorate that and make radio cool again, and find new types of talent, and find people who are going to be as engaging and dynamic, and potentially change the medium and move it into what the new sort of evolution or generation expects from it. And it's just something that stuck with me. And I thought about it this morning. I didn't want to make a separate slide on it, but when Rob mentioned it, I knew it was something that just, there is a thread there to tie back. We have plenty of opportunities, I think, still as an industry writ large, to be able to create personalities like that. I'm going to hand the next part of the presentation off to Jamie to really dive into the TuneIn OnAir benefits, and we'll chime in as needed.
Thanks, Bog. And before we do that, we have one more quiz. And Greg, I just want to say, this is your 3 to 3 opportunity.
Here we go.
Let's see if you can bring it home. What % of apps downloaded are used only once is the question here. So if y'all want to chime in or share responses in the chat, please go for it. Okay, I'm seeing some C's, an A from Lynn, D from Amanda.
Are we ready?
Let's do it. Oof.
So it's a full quarter. Here's some really interesting components of this.
Go for it, Bach.
Average user smartphone today has about 80 apps installed. Roughly 9 of those are apps that people use daily. Only 30 of them are apps that people use on a monthly basis. So greater than 62% of the apps on a user's phone go unused every month. And when you look at what are the 4 most critical areas that people continue to turn to apps for? Luckily, audio streaming remains one of the top 4 categories. And so there is, if we were drawing a Venn overlap, the opportunity around knowing that these are the types of apps that users are saying they care most about, that they engage with most frequently, and that you have an audience that is migrating more and more quickly over to this type of engagement for audio, really speaks to what are the ways that we can try and get ahead of that and start to program for this audience.
Thanks, Bach. And I'll pick it up from here to discuss TuneIn OnAir, which we introduced in January. And just to link it to that last quiz that we talked about, TuneIn is consistently one of the top 10 music apps in the Apple App Store. And so that's one of the pillars of how we distribute. We have a really, really strong app presence, and our entire team is focused on continuing to stay in and move up that top 10 so that we can serve as a platform for you, folks who create content, so that you don't have to focus on that piece of it. You can focus on developing and turning out really, really great radio content. And so TuneIn OnAir is an extension of that effort, which we've been working on for over 20 years. TuneIn OnAir is our new offering that we launched last month to provide professional internet radio stations with the opportunity to gain the exact same distribution and data analytics capabilities that we provide to major broadcasters, whether that be iHeart, which is on our platform, or major league sports like the NFL and NHL, which millions of people tune into on TuneIn. And so there are really 3 components of how we do that. One is we help you scale your audience. So we have 30 million listeners to TuneIn in the United States. Some of them listen through that app that they find in the App Store. A lot of them listen through one of our connected devices, whether it's an Alexa. As Rob mentioned, we see continued car listening that's really significant because of our relationships with those OEMs, and we'll talk through that a little bit later. We make your station available on every single device. So for folks who join TuneIn OnAir, within 24 or 48 hours of becoming a member, they can step into their Tesla, ask for their station to be played, and hear it completely seamlessly. And finally, we're really focused on helping broadcasters better understand who their listener is, how they like to engage with their content, and where they're based, what kinds of devices that they're listening on. So we have Amplifier, which is our custom data platform that we use ourselves every single day within TuneIn. We're customers of, we dog food it, and we make it available to TuneIn OnAir customers so that you can also better understand your listening and engagement habits. And we're offering this at a rate that we're really proud of, which is $249 quarterly to customers. It's something in the market that we've received a lot of great feedback around. But what I want to emphasize here is this is a service that's actually completely free to everyone in this group. It was really important to us that we support folks like yourselves who are really the bedrock of the radio community. And we're able to give 100% discount to all nonprofits, community, and college radio stations. So we look forward to discussing that piece a little bit further on. You can flip to the next slide, Bach. And so we started with a bang. We launched this actually the very first week of the year. We had coverage from over 15 trade outlets, which we were really proud of. And I just want to call out this quote from Radio Insight, which I think really speaks to what we were hoping to achieve with TuneIn OnAir. They said, "It's nice to see TuneIn finally opening up its platform again. While iHeartRadio and Odyssey each have some in that definition on their platforms, neither company is open with how to get listed or what they require to be added." iHeartRadio and Odyssey are great. They're friends of ours, but it was really important to us that we open up our platform and become a truly democratic solution where anyone who wants to create great content can be in a position to get listeners and to get ears on it. And that's what TuneIn OnAir is all about. And so what does a TuneIn OnAir partnership mean? It means your content is distributed across every one of our connected devices where we have relationships, and we have a dedicated team within TuneIn that is on the phone, on the Zoom, on the email all day with folks at Amazon, Apple, Google, Roku, Tesla, and also forthcoming EVs like Rivian, to make sure that we're not only available, but natively featured really prominently within those experiences, so that stations that are on TuneIn get listened to first before other stations. We offer an embed player and deep linking that you can offer on your site or your station site that can provide really easy access on the TuneIn OnAir platform. The amplifier analytics, which we'll share more about in the coming slide, and promotional support within our app. So if you think about the user journey, we're really privileged to be in that top 10 space within the music section of the Apple App Store. But once folks really easily find and download our TuneIn app, we're excited to be giving promoted distribution within really high visibility areas of our native app, like on the homepage. So your station could be featured on what we call the For You page, which is the very first experience that listeners see when they open up our app, and presented prominently in front of our 30 million US listeners. And something that we're starting to consider and look forward to feedback on from this group is the eventual opportunity to help stations like yourselves help monetize through revenue share programs. Do you want to click through, Buck? Awesome, thanks so much. And so the tools really kind of fall into three categories, and these are the ones that we just keep on hammering on. So I won't spend too much time on this, but those three are our distribution, our analytics, and our content capabilities, the ability to make your content really shine. We do not create content. We pride ourselves on not creating content because we know that we're not the experts in the space you are. We pride ourselves in our ability to get your content on the 200 plus connected devices where we have distribution and make sure that it's featured really prominently. On the cost front, I mentioned this earlier, but an area that we're really excited to dive into more deeply with this group and continue the conversation outside of this forum is around how we can help you with the cost challenge that we've discussed in this conversation. What are the kinds of ad sponsorships that you guys are working on currently, and how can we bring our relationships with advertisers in the space to bear to support your programs? How can we develop fruitful revenue share programs where we apply a part of the pre-roll that we put against the stations that are on the TuneIn platform to support your bottom line and help you guys achieve success? And how can we help you all with your hardware and software needs? We have conversations every day with a broad network of broadcasters, so we feel that we're very articulate and knowledgeable in this space, but we want to learn from you on what you need and how we can help and become a networker, connecting the dots across the entire radio landscape. And the last piece that we're really excited about is the e-learning webinar series that Andrew is going to speak on a little bit more in a moment, that is meant to coalesce the knowledge that we've developed from our relationships in the industry, whether it's through our partnerships with major broadcasters and content providers like the NFL and like NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, and CNN, and also with our relationships with distributors and platforms that we can become not just somebody who takes in knowledge and information and industry developments from those folks, but also is someone who purveys it and shares that with folks like you who can also benefit from it. And this is just a screenshot of Amplifier to give a preview of the analytics platform that you're going to have access to as a TuneIn OnAir member. As you can see, you'll get detailed time segmented breakdowns of listen hours, session starts, unique listeners and devices that are tuning into your station. And it has a lot of great filtering capabilities so that you can take different cuts of that data in a way that's digestible to you and your team.
So I'll touch on this one quickly. As we mentioned before, and these connected devices is so critical, right? Because this is kind of the new AM FM tuner in people's homes, as well as like some of these new cars are launching like almost don't even have a tuner. Like this is like we are the tuner on some of these new cars. So the one thing that I'll say is, because I mean people can set up their own skills on Alexa, for example, but what we've heard across the board is that getting adoption of skills is very difficult. Right now, TuneIn is basically a native integration on the Alexa Echo platform. So when you call out a station, probably 9 times out of 10, it's us powering it. So it's kind of a very good position to be in, because that means discovery is a lot easier than having to get a consumer to remember, I got to go activate a skill to then go listen to that station, right? And then the one other piece that's also interesting is, because we have so much listening across so many stations, so many platforms, we have great longitudinal data. So every day we have a daily war room that runs for half an hour in the morning, where we review all of our business performance day over day, week over week, month over month. And we're looking at listening, session starts, bounce rates, fails, because unfortunately, this is a complex ecosystem and there's always something breaking at any point in time. And sometimes it's something breaks on our end. A lot of times it breaks on some other part of the ecosystem. But the reality is that having that longitudinal data allows us to figure out what's broken and then go fix it very quickly, or reach out to the right partner. So the beauty of this is like, if you have a direct integration with Amazon and you don't see any listing, maybe it's you, maybe it's them, who knows? But when we have 100,000 stations on Amazon, I can tell whether it's one specific station or whether it's, all of them are not working, for it as an example. So that's part of the beauty of it. And plus the cost to maintain all these integrations can be cost prohibitive. So, and just one side note, we recently launched a new partner on the platform on connected devices, and we've been watching the listening grow. And it's fascinating to watch, because we're literally seeing how much pent up, I'll call it, verbal utterances. So this is literally that listening is, you can't promote stuff on Amazon, right? So if you think about it, if people go to the Echo or your Alexa and ask for something, it's some kind of brand trigger from some other place, right? It's not like you go into the app and you might see someone's button on and you click on and there's discovery. There's no real promotion on a lot of these smart speakers. So when we've launched new stations on these devices, that growth is literally just people randomly asking those utterances with no promotion. So I just believe there's so much more listening that's ready to happen when people are on all these devices. It's just that you're just not there yet.
Anything else on this, Rob or Jamie, you wanted to add?
No, I think we can go to the next slide.
Yep.
So one of the things that when we were discussing internally ways to really offer value back to our on-air partners out of the gate, especially partners such as yourselves, was to work with the wide network of partners and vendors that Rob alluded to just a few minutes ago, to say, how can we develop an e-learning series that will feature speakers from these partners and these vendor and content partners that we have on the platform, to help us really start to specifically address concerns or programming ideas or initiatives, or just general overall station operation, streaming technology, thought leadership, all of these types of communications and conversations that somehow we feel are not only important to share with the next generation of broadcast professionals, but also just valuable overall to continue to try and spread as much of this knowledge as we can, as far out as we can, so that people feel more confidence in choosing this as a career path. And I think to touch on something that Rob mentioned on the last slide, this came up in, I know I hate to mention the previous session, but I did watch a lot of that just to make sure that I wasn't hammering home too many of points that were already made and recorded. And one thing that I thought was a really telling takeaway from that was the acknowledgement of all of the additional sort of job components that are now being asked of this younger generation. Oh, you have to handle social, you have to handle digital. You are, in some ways, that's a benefit over some of the previous generation talent. In some ways, it is a challenge because it spreads you that much further thinner in terms of the things that you are overseeing. And our goal here is to really try and work with you guys and address and fill in those gaps and help people feel like they're getting as much education out of this as they can and feel as best prepared, so that as they are looking for their job coming out of school, whether that is with a corporate iHeart style organization, or someone who wants to go out and start something off on their own, that they have all the tools that they need at their disposal. Our TuneIn embed player has been around and in the wild now for many years, and we have a lot of really strong partners who have centralized their both web and mobile audio experiences around our feeds and the content that we are powering. In some cases for them, that would be true of an MSNBC or a CNN, where we are capturing their audio and creating our own audio stream that we are then feeding back to them for their use in their apps and on their websites. But also in the cases of radio stations like Coast 101.1, gdradio.net, KNBR here, the sports leader in the Bay Area of San Francisco. You can see all of these guys have embraced and been using our embed player for several years, both because it's reliable and also because it ties back into the statistics that we are offering in terms of getting that really good overview of where your audience is coming from, what devices they choose to engage with, and so on and so forth. And we've seen with CNN, with MSNBC, KNBR as well, double-digit increases in listening and engagement with these partners, and they're listening through these tools. And so it's a really good opportunity for you guys to also have direct links to your station within the TuneIn environment from your website, and this really try and create a closed loop of a system as you can to keep your users listening to your content no matter which device they want to use. Anything you wanted to add there, Jamie or Rob, on the embed?
No, you nailed it.
Great. So Jamie, on the partnership requirements?
Sure. In our conversations with nonprofits, colleges, and community stations, there are a couple asks that we have of folks who are working with us on the TuneIn OnAir free opportunity, and that is we would love for you to integrate the TuneIn embed player on your station website, the one that Bach just shared. We think it's one of the best embed players in its class, and it has a lot of SEO opportunities and benefits built into it. So it's a great way to kind of tout to listeners that you're part of the TuneIn network and that they can also listen on tunein.com and find it within the app. The second piece of that is clickouts from your station to the TuneIn app. We call them deep links. But again, because of the SEO capabilities and benefits that TuneIn has accrued by having those deep links on your site, it should benefit your position in the algorithm as well. In terms of costs, we want to help defray the cost that we know you're all up against by, again, making this a completely free program. So there will never be any cost that you have to shoulder to be part of TuneIn OnAir to benefit from our distribution and analytics. And we're really proud to offer that at no cost to this group. And from the content perspective, our ask is that you be a vocal cheerleader and advocate for TuneIn OnAir. We definitely are. We're really proud of it, but we are pretty confident that anyone who joins the program will be as well. And to that end, we ask that folks who are on it make weekly mentions promoting station availability on TuneIn across your channels.
And one point that I wanted to make here, guys, I think you can all, as radio professionals, will agree with me, asking for low single digits of mentions over the course of a week, with the intended guidelines of it being used to promote your station's availability on TuneIn, not promoting TuneIn and other offerings or other content on the platform, is, I hope, a signal that we are looking at this is in as much of a win-win-win framing as possible. And how can we ensure that we are getting the message out to your audience and listeners in the right way without it feeling like it is too onerous or cumbersome or impacting programming in any sort of way. That is not our intent with this at all. It's very much meant to buttress whatever existing promotional announcements you may have around where people might be able to listen to the station.
And I think one other point to add there is, and this was, I touched on it earlier, but if you look at most customer behavior, they're looking for very specific stations, right? So for example, in our app now, you'll notice there's like a recent. So as people listen to stations, it kind of populates that recent section. Then we have an autoplay feature. So when someone goes to the app, it's kind of a countdown timer, and then it starts playing that station. So the whole idea is our belief is that when you're next to other great brands, everyone's consumption goes up, right? There's the saying that Coke and Pepsi sell more Coke and Pepsi because there's Coke and Pepsi versus just Coke or Pepsi by themselves. And the reality is that, you have your diehard fans already listening via the channels you have now. How do we get it to all the rest of the people and make it like one click or one utterance easy to get to every single, it's ubiquity of distribution. So that way, they can always get to your station, always listen, no matter where they are. Because my general feeling is because you have so many connected devices and the world is going in that direction, any place you go, you're going to be able to get content, and it's going to be on a different device. So you want to make sure you're in every single place where someone could be asking for content.
So this is a recap of what we shared, what Jamie articulated here in terms of the on-air partnership, what exists within the partnership, and the opportunities for you, and sort of the ways that we're looking to work with you guys in a very concerted fashion in 2022 and beyond. So that brings us to the end of the sort of the formal presentation of this. We definitely wanted to leave time for anyone to be able to ask any questions that they may want to have for the group. Feel free to do that at this time. If there are any questions that you guys have that you do not want to share with the group, or you want to do more privately, we'll make arrangements for that to take place as well.
I'll go ahead and start off with a question, just a verification. I think I know the answer, but I wanted to make sure. So if we put that, the TuneIn link on our website, it will take people who click on it on our website will take it to our station, not just general TuneIn.
Yeah, so
Correct.
so if you think about the like the normal buttons you see like for the app either Apple or Android app stores, like the rectangular buttons everyone's
I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up right now, Rob.
Yeah, so we'll provide a deep link for your station. So if someone clicks on that, it will go to the app. You always have to go to the app store if the app isn't installed already, right? If the app's installed already, then it will go directly to the station. If it's not installed, they'll have to obviously install TuneIn. But then once the app opens, it will open to your page, which is super critical for remember that stat of like how many times people use the apps after they download them. Like part of that is if you don't have that like kind of delight moment the first time you open the app, you're in deep trouble from a user retention standpoint. So yes, it will deep link directly to your station. Great question.
Pairing off of John's question, what does this look like if you're using like a desktop and it's embedded on your site on a desktop?
What is the sorry, what does what look like?
So like that same embed that you mentioned that would go on our site that would tell you to open an app. What if you were viewing it on a desktop? Would it just play?
Yeah. So there's the embed player, right? Which just like looks like an embed player you would play, and it would play right on your app, like right on your website. Then what we suggest is having merchandising to say like, hey, you can find our station on all of these devices, and here's how you do it, right? So obviously for apps, you would have the buttons for the Android, Apple, and Amazon app stores. And then you would have on connected devices, you can have an automotive section that says, hey, we're on all these automotives. And then for smart speakers, here they are, just ask for XYZ.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and this visual right here helps too.
Yeah, so this I figured this might help Lynn. So just taking you guys through sort of the way that at least KMBR has managed this, where they've left their listen live button as is on their homepage. That page takes them to their now more robust sort of here's the broad array of ways to listen to us, and streaming right here from our website. Here you go. And that's sort of the simple way of doing it. When you look at someone like CNN, they've taken a slightly different tack on this. But when you click on the menu here and hit audio, we have multiple stations for CNN that we're streaming. And so they wanted the optionality for people to be able to listen to any of them right directly from their site. And so clicking here just immediately launches CNN
in second place,
right
so they
there.
would move up.
So there are look forward to working with you guys on an individualized basis, depending on what makes the most sense for you. But to Rob's point, the goal is to sort of lean into existing user behaviors, not try and set new ones. So that's why sort of building off of the tiles, the download on Apple and download on Android iOS tiles is probably the most efficient way for us to deploy this.
I'll jump in with a question. So we're already on TuneIn. Our station is. We're not specifically under this program though. So I'm just wondering what it looks like to transition over to this program, since it looks worthwhile to get the deeper analytics and things like that. And then a second question I had was about podcasts. So we have a number of podcasts that our station produces. I was wondering if there's a way currently, or maybe in the future, a way of kind of bundling those together into a landing page in the TuneIn app, so that you can easily see that's all in the same ecosystem and they don't have to be searched separately.
Short answer is yes, Jeremy. On the podcast side of this, it was actually, as Jamie, Rob, and I were preparing for this, we debated whether or not we would make mention or even include anything about on-demand episodes or anything like that. Opted to pull it out just to keep things clean. But the goal here is, yes, if we are able to create the environment for your users where they're coming over for everything live, I think a really big content opportunity that I see that exists within your guys' world is on the on-demand space as well, both in terms of current programs and shows that you are operating, but also more legacy and historical and archival stuff. I mean, I think about, I've been trying to play this game for a long time. So I was on my high school television station back in the early 1990s. And at the time when I joined, the only thing that they were syndicating or airing were school board meetings and the occasional swim meet and some other stuff. And I said, hey guys, why can't we create a programming slate? There's all this, Ernie Kovacs material and all this, stuff that is free and widely available to us that this whole generation of people may not even be aware of. What are the ways for us to reintroduce them to this content in the format and the medium that they are choosing or saying this is the way that we want to engage with it? And I think you're seeing a lot of that across the board in the podcast space, right? There's so many popular shows that are basically just retelling of stories that may have been told or that we may already know of or have some sort of historical context, and we're trying to reframe it and retell it for the new audience in the way that they're choosing to want to engage with this stuff. So I think the on-demand side of the thing is a huge opportunity, especially think about legacy college programs like a lot of the ones that are on this call who have archives of shows of talent. Maybe they want to go take, hey, the Syracuse station wants to go get all the guy, Mike Tirico and all the old heads and put together some sort of classic opportunity for people to go listen to the stars before they were stars kind of thing. So I see there's, I look at this landscape right now as just wide opportunity. And it really just comes down to helping you guys best navigate this and understand what is where, and this is where the data comes in to be super helpful, understanding what is the actual time that people are spending on our station. So even if we only have 100 listeners, if they're listening for 5,000 hours, oh my God, that's telling us that we're actually doing something right. How do we start to grow the amount of audience that's here? And there's nothing wrong with our programming. That type of insight will not only help you guys as the educators and leaders of these programs, but also the students and the future broadcasters themselves who are really trying to get that. If you think about all the other mediums, Jamie touched on it a little bit earlier, that immediacy of engagement and feedback that we are very capable of applying to the audio space and just haven't done as much of. I think that's the opportunity that's really in front of us today. And there's when I think about the youth, the people that are on your campus, there's a lot of opportunity there to mine.
But just to get to your, because totally agree with Andrew on the podcast thing. The simple thing is it's a simple addendum to sign, and then we get to the link.
I was going to circle back to that. Yeah. So we'll have an addendum, Jeremy. We fully entered this presentation with the understanding that we actually have a good majority of college radio stations that are on TuneIn. But I did an audit myself of every single station, and I can promise you the vast majority, I would imagine a lot of people don't even know that they're on TuneIn, have forgotten that they're on it. It may have been set up by someone who's no longer at the university or at the station. The stream may be woefully outdated. It may not be their current streaming stack. The schedules are outdated, all the contact information, the logos, all of the stuff that really creates that rich, engaging experience for users that continue to drive them back to stations are what we're really hoping to finally deploy to this cohort, because I think it creates a material change, even if just visually for the user to see, oh, everything's complete here. I can follow along. This is my schedule. These are who's on when. And then that will dovetail into the on-demand side of things as well, Jeremy, because you'll be able to say, okay, Jeremy's on from 12 to 3. And if you missed it, here's the on-demand version of his show. So that is the general direction for sure.
A question following up with Jeremy's thought. If we're on TuneIn currently, now, so what's the first thing we have to do here so we can get to the analytics and and the logo on our website and that kind of stuff.
So we're going to be, I'm going to follow up as part of this. I think it's going to be through you guys, if I'm not mistaken, directly. Lynn, I don't know if Lynn's still on or not, but I know that we had, the goal was for us to try and communicate directly through the CBI listserv, since you guys are all very active on there. Make sure that the addendum paperwork is available to you. It'll be a click through on that side for you guys, and then from there we will start compiling all the updated information from you guys, from the stations themselves, making those updates within our back end. And then, as Jamie said, it's a 24 to 48 hour sort of cycle, especially when you're talking about connected devices in terms of
sometimes it can be longer for like Alexa.
That's a good point, Rob. Yeah,
up to a month. But if your stream's already live, then it shouldn't. There shouldn't be
as bad.
Just updating the metadata.
Yeah. So they're constantly re-indexing our catalog, but to Rob's point, each device and each platform does it on a different cadence. So it's not a one-stop shop kind of situation.
A question about the revenue sharing potential in the pre-roll. Will stations have the ability to limit what kind of advertising would appear on there?
Yeah, so we have the ability to block categories, and then the other thing where I said under development is, we're still want to make sure we work through all the nuances, because I know as potentially a nonprofit or college, there are different rules. So we want to kind of work with, is there a way for us to, because I have a sales team that's out selling to Fortune 500 companies. So my dream would be, obviously we have to operationalize and make this work, but how beautiful would it be if, like, we can get, I don't know, Coke, Pepsi, whatever, name your advertiser, to be able to basically sponsor all of college radio across the board. Every station gets some kind of payment, and then some form, and then a kind of a sliding scale payment based on listing hours, right? Because obviously, as an advertiser, and you're sponsoring, you're trying to reach eyeballs. At the same time, I also know every station has a certain amount of fixed costs. So that's one concept we're working through. It's not baked yet, but I think the first step is, like, let's get distribution analytics up, because I think there's a lot of value in just the stuff we're doing without that. And then this stuff is like the add-on gravy as we work through it. Because that's also a scale thing, right? Like, there may be a lot of value to be able to say, we have every single college radio station in the country. In one fell swoop, you can support college radio, get in front of college students. Although I know my wife listens to WFUV and she's definitely not a college student anymore. But yeah, so. And then one other piece we're looking at too is, because we have the apps and we also have a premium business, right? So one of the things we didn't mention is we have a premium subscription business where we strip off the advertising, our advertising. Obviously, we can't take it out of commercial streams. And then we have play-by-play sports and our news stations. Instead of having ads, we actually put additional content in there. So there's a value to those subscribers. So one of the other things we're going to be looking at is, the ability to do contest or bounty. So, if the on-air talent does a contest, like, hey, let's drive installs, we can have tracking links around that, and then either pay a bounty back or have a contest to, like, what station drives the most installs, that sort of thing.
Any other questions? All right. Yeah, so want to say thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being a partner and sponsor with CBI, and look forward to seeing where this can go. And maybe we can get you out at one of our conferences here soon. Maybe
I would love that. Yeah, I joined the virtual conference last year and sat on the full 3 days of presentations to the group, which I found very helpful and actually informed a lot of what we tried to build the program here around. So definitely look forward to continuing the relationship with all of you guys and helping you navigate this transition into the digital future.
All right. Well,
Thank you,
Andrew,
everyone.
oh, go ahead.
And I just want to say thank you. It was great, and I love the engagement of everybody on the call. Thanks for all the questions and all the answers to our quizzes. So,
Thanks
All
for
right.
having us, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew, Rob, Jamie, and look forward to working with you more in the future. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. We'll have another webinar coming up on, as I'm looking for the date, February 22nd, 3:30 Eastern Time, and it's using Discord to communicate with your staff and more. Thanks much. Everybody have a great day.
thank you.
Thank you.